Today's episode is brought to you by Pat Live. Did you know 76% of customers hang up if they don't reach a live person, and 85% of those customers won't call back after an unanswered call? Missed calls means missed opportunities to successfully grow your business. Pat Live offers 24/7 live answering services so you can spend less time on the phone and more time focusing on your business. You know, finding your frequency, listeners, we've got to focus on those businesses. Unlike many other live answering service, they're open 365 days a year. Their friendly and professional agents are all located in the United States and provide all the benefits of a personal receptionist, but at a fraction of the cost. They offer fully customizable scripts and call handling experiences to fit your business needs and fit seamlessly with your brand. Pat Live is more than just an answering service. They offer everything from message taking, call screening and transfers, to lead collection, appointment scheduling, order processing, and more. And now, for a limited time, Pat Live is offering listeners of this podcast, Finding Your Frequency, 15% off the regularly listed rates. This is only available over the phone, so make sure you give them a call right now at 866-712-1879. Again, that's 866-712-1879, and mention the Finding Your Frequency podcast for more information, or visit patlive.com. 15% off the regularly listed rates. Make every call count with Pat Live. 866-712-1879.
Mark, 1 Charlie. Mark, 1 Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm full of optimism.
Einstein's theory of relativity.
We're still seeing it quite well through that haze. T-minus 37 seconds.
The fight is growing confident.
E equals MC.
That all men are created equal.
About the future innovations.
And growing strength in the air.
Tear down this weapon. Head on. Something's happening coming up on station.
This is Finding Your Frequency with your host, Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. It's time to speak up, share your voice, and hear from the thought leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another fantastic episode of Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Ryan Treasure, and you're tuned in right here on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining into the show and listening on your favorite podcast application, or if you're listening to the show live, we really appreciate you. Make sure that you like and share this with your friends, and of course, make sure to give us 5 stars instead of 4, because 5 stars are better than 4. Why? If you're going to give 4, give 5. Let's do this thing. We got a great show for you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurism and what it means in the space of being an attorney. And we have a great guest that's going to be joining us today as well. Our guest is Allan Friedman. He is the owner of the law offices of Allan Friedman, and he's a highly experienced Connecticut criminal defense attorney defending individuals facing allegations for driving offenses, domestic violence, drug offenses, assault, all of those types of things that would require a defense attorney, and he's had some great results. So we want to welcome him to the show. Welcome, Allan.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here, and nice to meet you.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you being on the show today, and I know that as a lawyer, you guys are really busy. You're not billing me by the hour right now, are you?
Certainly not. It's my pleasure to be here. It's a great opportunity to share with your listeners a little bit about what we do in criminal law in Connecticut.
So were you wondering how long it was going to be before I had a lawyer joke?
Yeah. There's a lot of lawyer jokes. I remember when I went to my first Mensa meeting a long time ago, and it was consisted of a series of lawyer jokes. I have a thick skin.
That's awesome. Well, you got to have a thick...
kind of like the dentist, right? Nobody wants to go to the dentist, right? But when you have a toothache, you have to go to the dentist. And it's the same thing with a criminal lawyer. You really don't want to visit the criminal lawyer. But when you have a need for a criminal lawyer, you want to go to the criminal lawyer. So we're just like a good dentist. A good dentist wants to make that experience as painless and as stress-free as possible, and make it a positive experience, even though you really don't want to be there.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, and especially having a thick skin as well. I mean, that's something that I believe is an important component, especially as a lawyer. I mean, you're out there arguing constantly, so it's important to have some thick skins.
Well, in in this business, I feel that we need to make sure, especially, let me just share this with you. It's interesting how technology has innovated our business as a whole. When I started out 28 years ago, the internet was just an infancy. Smartphones didn't exist, and the way we advertised and got business as lawyers was through yellow page ads. And there's no feedback loop through a yellow page ad. It's just a constant succession of new clients coming to you. Whoever had the biggest yellow page ad got the most clients. And today, feedback is instantaneous. If a customer doesn't have a positive experience with you, immediately they're going to give you a bad review. And it's interesting how you kicked off the show. Give us 5 stars instead of 4. It's just easy to give us 5 stars. Well, you know what? In a customer service industry, which is really what we are, we're in a business trying to satisfy a customer and make a customer happy. We want those 5-star reviews. We want to satisfy the customer. It's a customer-centric orientated business. We want to make sure the customer has a positive experience in a terrible situation. The customer is going through a really bad experience in their life, and they're facing possibly one of their worst crises. You're there to help guide them through the process and give them the best possible outcome. But at the same time, you have to give them customer service. And a lot of lawyers, I think, they don't understand their true role, which is not only to get the legal result, but also to give them the good customer service. So my point being, technology being what it is, it's really transformed our industry with the feedback, with the Google reviews, with the ability for people to communicate with each other so much and have so much information at their fingertips and making a decision on which lawyer to hire. So we really need to perform a lot of roles that we didn't traditionally fulfill. We have to be the counselor to the lawyer, to the client. We have to be available to the client all the time to answer questions, very promptly. With all the methods of communication, video conferencing, text messaging, emails, all these things that didn't exist when I started. And I'm not that old. I feel like I'm old, but those methods of communication didn't even exist. But we need to implement them in our business so that the customer is feeling connected with the process. Is something that's very important to the client. Look, their case for trespassing or shoplifting may not be, on the docket of the United States Supreme Court, but to that client, it's the most important case to that particular client. And they want to make sure that they know that you're on top of the case and going to get them a great result. It doesn't matter if you get that case dismissed ultimately a few months down the road. If you're not keeping that client in the loop or letting them know what's happening with their case and they're feeling that anxiety and that uncertainty, they're not going to be happy with what you did for them. So it's difficult in this business to keep the customer happy who's dealing with a lot of stress, and also fight the prosecutor who's working for the state who has a opposing objective, right? That the prosecutor is looking to punish this person. So, and then you have the judge. So you're dealing with a lot of different people, and you kind of have to satisfy everybody and work to a favorable outcome, and doing it with keeping everyone happy.
Yeah, that's a tough job. It's challenging. I mean, that's umpteen number of personalities that you as a lawyer are managing, from the prosecutor, the judge, the client, the client's significant other, any of those things. And then, your own internal staff that you're also working with, I'm sure, paralegals and those types as well. Are you having trouble finding hand sanitizer? Well, Spa Treat has you covered. There's no need to go searching high and low. Just visit spatreatofficial.com and place your order on their easy to use website. On schedule delivery. One of the great things about this product, Spa Treat Fulfillment Team is working around the clock to provide people hand sanitizer during this time of need and get your order to you as quickly as possible, even faster than Amazon. Spa Treat also has the lowest price of any of its competitors. Spa Treat has 62% alcohol content, and the FDA recommends between 60 to 80 for maximum protection. This one has 62 because it doesn't dry your hands out. I use this stuff every single day. It is fantastic. It's got certified organic extracts with the ingredients in that hand sanitizer that are the highest quality, and they're designed to leave your hands smelling and feeling fresh while protecting you at the same time. The best part, there's no tricky residue left over. None of that sticky stuff. 4 scents available: unscented, tea tree, lavender, and lemon. And best of all, this product right here is made in the good old United States of America. A lot of companies are having trouble dealing with the current demands, so Spa Treat has dedicated themselves to providing a much needed product in the time of crisis. Spa Treat has better prices, faster shipping, and a larger supply than any of their competition. There isn't even a close second. Visit SpaTreatOfficial.com and enter promo code SPA SPA at checkout to receive 5% off your entire order. That's right. Not only are they offering the lowest price available, but they're also offering our listeners a discount. This promo code is exclusive to Voice America, and only our listeners get this discount. Spa Treat and Voice America came together on this sponsorship in order to provide Americans something they could really need right now: peace of mind. Visit SpaTreatOfficial.com and order yours today. That's SpaTreatOfficial.com, and make sure you use the promo code SPA at checkout to receive 5% off your entire order. SpaTreatOfficial.com. Get your awesome hand sanitizer. In the spirit of the show, how did you find your frequency? Like, where was that aha moment where you're like, yeah, I'm going to go be a lawyer? I mean, what was that for you?
Well, I'll share with you. I really don't talk much about this, especially now with my clients, but when I was a child, I was kind of misdirected a little bit, all right? And I had this crazy dream at the time when I was about 14 or 15. I had a fantasy that I wanted to become like a outlaw biker, believe it or not. That's the crazy idea I had in my head. I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an outlaw biker. I watched those shows, and I said, those guys look like they have the best lifestyle, free on a Harley Davidson, driving around, doing whatever they want to do. They don't have to listen to anyone, and that's kind of the mentality I was at until I met this police officer when I was 16. And basically, my experience with this police officer was he put me in handcuffs, took me down to the police station, and beat me to a pulp. And I'll never forget the transformation and what that effect that had on my psyche, because there was nobody who could step in to help me in that situation. And to be brutalized in that manner, and to go through that and to realize the police have this terrible authority and power over you, it kind of got me thinking, what can we do to counteract this power? What is the correct step? What can we do to protect people? So at the age of 16, I really didn't have a plan, but I started thinking about this. And as I matured, went to college, and that's really where it coalesced into my mind that my future was in fighting for rights of people who are oppressed. And I don't believe for a minute that all police are bad. Definitely not the case. But there's a lot of people who are locked up right now who are completely innocent of their crimes. Just recently, a few months ago, we used there's a show on Netflix. I'm not going to use profanity on your show. I don't know if we're allowed to do that, but it's called Don't F with Cats. That's the name of the show. And the way they did was they used some cyber tools to track down a serial killer who had tortured cats, and it's on Netflix. It's a great show. I watched that show, and I used some of those methods to prove the innocence of my client who was falsely accused of a crime. And begrudgingly, I got the police to, cooperate to drop the charges against my client who was completely innocent. And he went through a huge ordeal. And just looking at how the police said to me, they went on the record on the press, they said, in 14 years we've been doing this, this is the first time anybody, we've arrested was innocent. And I said to myself, you know what?
Jeez.
That's probably not correct. That's the first time in 14 years that the guy's been innocent. It's probably been the rest of the innocent people weren't lucky enough to have found a lawyer who luckily, through coincidence, was able to find the evidence to prove that this person was actually innocent. A lot of people probably took a plea bargain, who were innocent, because they said, you know what, I don't want to go to trial and face the risk of taking a trial tax.
Yeah, or maybe they didn't have money. Money is a huge factor when it comes to that too. I mean, when you think about, I'm innocent, But do I have the capital means to be able to pay my lawyer for a trial? Right? Because once you start going to trial, I'm sure that, the costs become increasingly more expensive too. And if you have a monetary issue where you don't have funds readily available to protect yourself in this manner, and, you may look at that and go, well, spend money that I don't have and go through a trial with an unknown outcome, or take a plea bargain where I know there's a known outcome and I can forecast the cost of this as well. I mean, I think that's probably plays into it too, right?
Well, it definitely plays into it for a lot of people. And unfortunately, a lot of people can't even afford a lawyer in our society. I'm thinking about one guy I'm representing right now who's quite well off financially. He was charged with something. He's completely innocent. He didn't do anything wrong. He's charged with some bogus drug possession charge, and I've proven to the state that he was in possession of a prescribed medication that his doctor prescribed to him, and I've given this proof to the state. They're continuing to prosecute the case. We're going to have to take it to trial, but so far I've had to retain a pharmacist to give us certification that the substance was, not a controlled substance. I had to go to his original doctor and get copies of the prescriptions to the compounding pharmacy that made this substance for him to treat his rare medical disorder, to say that this substance is not a controlled substance. And then now I've had to hire a private investigator to review the police body camera footage to say that the way they interacted with my client was not appropriate. Luckily, my client has the money to do all this, and we're well positioned to defend his rights at trial. Otherwise, he might be forced to take a plea bargain and plead guilty to some minor misdemeanor. But luckily, he has the resources to do it. Recently, I was just thinking about our society. And of course, we're in the middle of the political season where we have all the debates about what we should do looking forward in our society. And, it's somewhat shocking that we're the world's leading jailer in the United States. And we have to ask ourselves, why? We have the most amount of people locked down, 750 people per 100,000 locked down in the United States, more than Russia or China or any other country. It's amazing, right? We're a prison state.
Yeah, well, I think for a long time, there's been a lot of people that were in jail for stupid, silly stuff like possession of a joint. Oh my God, this guy's got a joint. We better lock him away for 5 years. Some of those policies are, thankfully, kind of changing, state to state based off of like medical marijuana and stuff. But that was one thing that always bugged the heck out of me is like, I live in Arizona, and if you get caught with, a seed of marijuana, a stick, a stem, anything, and you're not part of the medical marijuana program that's here in Arizona, like it's an automatic felony. It's like insane.
Well, there's a lot of, with drug laws, right? There's a lot of disproportionate application of the law depending upon what type of drug, and a lot of that is racially biased. Like in federal sentencing laws until quite recently, for instance, people who had a small amount of crack cocaine could face a life sentence, versus someone who had powder cocaine would face a much lower sentence. And certainly, from state to state, from place to place, with marijuana, the sentences vary dramatically. The enforcement varies dramatically. The policeman's attitude when the police officer encounters somebody who's in possession of a small amount of drugs will vary greatly depending upon who he encounters, depending upon their race and where they're from. If they're from the community where the police officer is, encountering them, or if they're from a different area. All these factors come into play, so the outcomes are very disproportionate and unfair a lot of times. And the people who are affected a lot of times are wrongfully affected. It's reflected upon the the percentage of people who are incarcerated based upon their race. Black people are 4.7% of the adult black males are incarcerated right now. versus
4.4% of the entire population.
4.7% of black males are incarcerated.
That is an insane statistic.
Right, versus 0.7% of white males. So I listen. You know what? I don't believe for a minute that my Afro-American brothers and sisters are any more likely to commit crimes than any other race. It's
I agree.
Not something that I believe.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. You know, I have friends from all types of ethnicities, and I joke around all the time, and and I say, I don't hate anybody. I just hate everybody. Because everybody has tendencies. Treat everybody the same. I agree.
But it's unfortunate. It's a tradition of our society. I was thinking back to my youth when I was a young boy. I grew up in the South, and I grew up in the era of the Civil Rights Movement. When Dr. Martin Luther King was making a big change. And we've made a lot of changes. We've come a long way since those times, right? Things were a lot worse. It was a lot uglier when people were rioting in the streets all over our country, to make a change, to do away with segregation, to do away, to bring the Civil Rights Act into effect. Tremendous change. But unfortunately, the racism in effect is still affecting our criminal justice system. And that's something that, for my small part, I like to use whatever resources I can do on a case-by-case basis to overcome, because unfortunately, as a system, a systemic bias, it's having a huge impact upon Afro-Americans. One statistic that shocks me, I think about all the time, is that Afro-American males are 49% of them are becoming arrested by the age of 23, which is a shocking statistic to me.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a shocking statistic if it was with any group. You know what I mean? No matter the group it is, if you're, half of your entire race is being arrested by the time they're that age. I mean, that's just a huge problem in and of itself with, racial profiling and all that. I'm 100% familiar with that. I got the opportunity to live in Maricopa County for the entire time that Sheriff Joe Arpaio was in office, and I'm sure you've heard that name before, but that guy.
Oh yes.
That guy was the epitome of racial profiling. I mean, he would specifically send patrols through Latino-based communities and do raids on houses for no reason with no warrants, and had lots of troubles. And thank God he's not the sheriff here anymore. We got a new guy who's been a lot better and who understands some of those relationships a lot better and is able to manage himself a lot better. But I mean, there was a time where Maricopa County was just getting hit with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and for me as a taxpayer, I'm like, at what point does this end? Like, this money that's being spent to these victims of the crimes that are perpetrated against them by our own police. Not only are our tax dollars being paid out to them to patrol our streets, then you guys make bad decisions and do racial profiling activities, and then now my taxes are now going the other direction, and now we're paying lawsuits because of the same thing. And so now I feel like we're spending all of this extra money that could have went to education, knowing that the United States is one of the lower ranked education. Like, if we had, less resources in going to the police state and all of those things, like, how much better educated could our kids be?
I couldn't agree with you more. You know what? I was thinking to myself, just the other day, I was saying, all this talk and the debates about, education, how important education is, how important it is for our society to move forward to compete against China and other nations in the new technologies of the future, is that we have an educated workforce. We're spending $40,000, per prisoner per year on average to incarcerate people. And then when they're incarcerated, it's interesting that when people get out of jail, it's very hard for them to find jobs often. first of all, when they're in jail, they're learning. It's basically a college of crime. It's like a university of how to be a bad person. You're putting them in a situation where they're learning terrible things, not good things. And when they come out, nobody wants to hire them. We have right now 700,000 people in our society who are people who've been released from prison who can't find jobs in the first year they've been released from prison because nobody wants to hire them.
Well, when people go to prison though, don't they get the opportunity to further educate themselves while they're there so they can be prepared for going back into regular society?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, if you avail yourself of all the programs that are available in prison, I mean, you can even get a college degree. You can get your GED. You can get any kind of education. There's a lot of opportunities that are available, and of course, anybody who's going to be incarcerated, it will be a great opportunity to take advantage of that. But let's just think about this statistic: 1/3 of black men in their 20s in the United States at this time are either on parole, probation, or in prison, right? So that's just like a ridiculous number, right? So what is their future? What is their future going to be like? And how much harder is it for them in that situation, being in prison, on parole, or on probation, to hold down a job and to get an education and get ahead? And, why is it that they're in that situation? Where's the bias? Where's that coming from? It's coming from all different angles, from the police enforcement to how the system is adjudicating their case, to the resources they have to obtain an attorney, to the sentences that are being handed out by the judges. All this needs to be changed. And, it's really being, I think Bernie Sanders is the only one that's really talking about it. And I know this is not a show about politics, and I don't, agree necessarily with any one of the candidates, but it's just a pity that more of the candidates aren't talking about our problem with being the number one prison state. And as a criminal defense attorney, I try to do my part every day to try to fight for the rights of my clients, to make sure that they're not getting railroaded.
Yeah. And
it just pains me when I see people who don't have the opportunity to get a private lawyer. It's funny you talked about entrepreneurship and business. I just wanted to point this interesting thought out. It's just an interesting thought. I'm in a business as a criminal defense attorney. I'm running a business here that basically you can get the product for free. Just think about that. Imagine you're running a restaurant or a supermarket, and there's another competing restaurant or supermarket in town that's giving away the same product for free. And that's basically what's going on. We have a public defender here that's basically giving away their legal representation totally for free. That has a staff of very experienced attorneys that are basically representing people for free. So, why is it that people don't want to use those public defenders? And why is it that those great public defenders who are very qualified and experienced at doing criminal law, they've been doing it their whole career, why are they not able to satisfy the customer and deliver the good result?
I can answer that question. They're overloaded. They have too many cases, and they can't put enough time, effort, and energy into specific cases to litigate them properly, and so they're forced to stretch too thin with too little resources, and they don't do as good of job as somebody like yourself. That's my answer.
We're on the same page. We're on the same page. Another aspect of it is a public defender. Reality, there's really no incentive for them. They're not an entrepreneur. There's no incentive for them. They work 9 to 5 like any other civil servant. If you deal with the DMV, right, you're dealing with the DMV, and you want to get your driver's license, they're not going to stay till 7 or 8 o'clock at night to help you to get your driver's license. If whatever time their office hours are closed, they're closed, right? Any civil servant's the same story. I work 12 to 14 hours a day every day, and on the weekends too. When you're an entrepreneur, you're working long hours to make sure your business runs smoothly and your customers are taken care of. So that's the reason why we're able to compete in a business where they're being provided a free service, and that's the reason why the free service doesn't work properly. Because in order to get a successful result for my client, when I walk into the courtroom, I need to know my client's case better than anybody else in that courtroom, better than the prosecutor, better than the judge. I need to know the facts and everything about the client's case, more than anyone. And the only way to do that is by putting the time into the case.
Yeah, and I mean, you're cultivating a relationship with your client, and knowing about the situation, but then knowing them as a person is important too. I mean, I would imagine that making sure that you understand their personality type and you understand some of those key components of why and who they are, will go into the way that you litigate, right? Because you want that outcome, and you've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is in fact innocent. And that burden of proof is on you as the defense.
Well, supposedly, according to our system of justice, the burden of proof is supposed to be on state to prove.
Yeah, but that's not the way it really works.
No, well, the thing is the way the criminal justice system really works in the United States right now is that 99.999% of cases never go to trial. So the whole concept of your right to a trial and your right to confront the witnesses and have the state prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt is just something we watch on TV. For the typical person who's facing a criminal charge, especially a first-time offender, it's going to be a diversionary program of some kind, some type of a program for first-time offenders. In Connecticut, I'm sure every state has its own
another way for the state to take your money. That's all that is.
They're very, not only are the diversionary programs expensive, but what happens is, as part of our prison state, these diversionary programs set up a whole system of bureaucracies that administrate them, and they refer the people out to different agencies that implement the different programs, whether it be a drug education program or an alcohol education program. We even have firearm safety programs. We have all these different diversionary programs. They're all administered by somebody, and everybody has a job. It's a whole enterprise. It's an industry. So
it's a racket.
Yes, the diversion. I don't want to call it a racket, but it's definitely.
You didn't. I did.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I think if we spent our money on these young people, especially, it seems that disproportionately minority youths are the ones who are disproportionately the ones who are being swept into our criminal justice system. And the end product is what we're putting out is we're putting out people with criminal records. We're going to have a hard time finding a job. We're spending their formative years when they should be being trained for the jobs of the future, learning new technologies, and becoming our workforce that's going to help propel us to prosperity. We're basically making them second-class citizens, branded with a criminal record, and lacking the skills we need for the next century. What's going to be our future?
Yeah, we won't have one.
China's not doing that with their citizens.
No.
They certainly have a very draconian system. They do execute people, and they have very unfair trials. They have a lot of issues, but they don't have anywhere near the amount of people we have locked down.
It's just a shame, too. I mean, how much human potential is, just sitting in a cell for some silly reason. I wholeheartedly believe, I mean, if you assaulted someone because you have anger management problems, or you're, doing something in the neighborhood of, like you're a murderer or a rapist or whatever, like some of the really heinous type of crimes, like, yes, you deserve to be locked up. But some of these people who are in jail for such, what I feel are minor offenses, it's ridiculous. And then to have that, almost like that black mark, on your person, which they call a felony, and having that black mark. And even though you rehabilitated, you went back to school, you got a degree, a lot of people don't look past that you have a felony, right? It's, hiring managers and HR departments are going through resumes, and they see these, qualified person, and then they have to answer this question of, have you ever been convicted of a crime in the last 5 years? And you answer that question, and if anybody marks, yes. I feel like that the HR manager just automatically discards that human being and their potential for somebody who doesn't have that black mark, even though that person could potentially be more qualified or have more education, or in some instances maybe they had previous experience in that particular area. But not giving somebody a look just because of something they've done in the past that they've been rehabilitated for, they've paid their debt to society, is just completely unfair.
Yeah, well, the question we have to ask ourselves as a society is what are we looking to accomplish? So if we take a human being and we lock them up for a crime, and then they come out of jail after they've been associating with some pretty hardened criminals in that jail, and they come out after listening to all that negativity and toxicity for that period of time, and they come out and they try to do the right thing, and they try to apply for jobs, and they keep getting that door closed in their face over and over again. Rejection. What's the outcome going to be if the person can't get a job, if nobody wants to hire them? I think that we're basically, training these people and encouraging them to turn to crime.
Well, that's
why
the recidivism rate is so high. I mean, people who go to jail generally end up going back to jail. I'm sure you would have the more statistics on that than I do, but that's anything I read about. People that are coming out of prisons or jails and those types of populations, like 80% of them end up right back where they came from.
Well, it's definitely a problem because the reality of what I'm seeing with the prison population is that a lot of the people that are headed to prison, interestingly, have one of two characteristics, right? Which prison isn't really adapted to solve. Okay. Now, look, like this, as you said, there are definitely situations, right? If you have a person who commits a violent assault on somebody, or rapes somebody, or does some type of violent crime, absolutely, we need to have, prison sentence serves a lot of functions. First of all, it has some form of punishing, to the person who committed the crime, but also serves as a deterrent, effect to let other people know, hey, this is not the way we operate as a society. We don't want to send the message that you can go out and do these types of crimes and get away with it. So we need that deterrent effect. But let me ask you this question. If you have somebody who's mentally ill, for example, who doesn't know the difference between right or wrong, who's suffering from schizophrenia, and they commit some type of crime when they're in that type of condition, right? What type of deterrent effect is the possibility of them doing a jail sentence going to have on them when they're in a state of mental insanity? Because they don't even know what planet they're on.
It just makes it worse.
So you take that person, like for instance, right now I'm defending a youth. His case has been highly publicized in the area. He was 18 years old. He was walking down the street with a raccoon under his arm and some skivvies, and he decided to stop in the middle of one of our most luxurious towns, very high-end town, and take a dump right on the sidewalk. So somebody observed this and said, this is kind of strange. A young man walking in this affluent town full of billionaires and millionaires and just taking a dump right in the middle of the sidewalk with a dead raccoon under his arm. Let's call the police, right? So when the policeman responded, this little wiry youth, I guess the policeman wasn't careful enough and wasn't watching out. He punched the policeman in the face and broke the policeman's jaw and his nose. It's caused a serious injury. I mean, listen, nobody wants to see a policeman get hurt, right? Nobody wants to see that. And I'm not blaming the policeman at all. But this kid, at the time that he committed this offense, was suffering from severe mental disorder. He was suffering from such severe mental disorder that at the time that I took on the case, he needed to go to a psychiatric facility for months to be restored to competency to stand trial because they found him to be extremely mentally disturbed. He was so mentally disturbed he didn't even know if I was a lawyer or if I was a Martian. So, at this point, the state is trying to offer him a period of incarceration to an 18-year-old who's never committed any crime because he punched a police officer while he was suffering from schizophrenia and didn't even know what planet he was on. It's a true story.
That's insane.
I mean, we're going to take people. I mean, I remember back in the day. I don't know if you remember this. There was a huge scandal here in New York State about Bellevue Medical Hospital. You know, they were treating mentally ill people extremely poorly. As a result of that, there was a huge backlash all over the United States, right, in the 70s, to take people that were those, people who were mentally disturbed and let them out in the community, because previously we were locking them up in a jail-like setting. We weren't treating them properly, and we weren't allowing them to be in the community, right, which was very unfair. It was very, very unfair, because those people who are suffering from those disabilities can be treated with medication, right, and they can exist in our society. They can function. Somebody like that needs treatment with doctors and medication, and they can exist just fine. But in the 70s, we were locking them in psychiatric hospitals and throwing the key away and just locking them away, and they were in very horrendous conditions. It was very inhumane, and there was a lot of, public outcry with this, so we changed the whole system. Now the system has changed to where if someone has a mental disorder and commits a crime, they'll throw them in jail. So you have somebody who has a mental illness, who's in a prison system, not getting any treatment for their mental condition, in with a bunch of inmates who may be abusing them and doing horrible things to them, and coming out even more mentally ill than they were when they came in. So if you ask yourself about recidivism rate, how could the recidivism rate be better for somebody like that? Their mental illness is only going to get worse when they come out of jail. It's not going to get better. They didn't get any treatment while they were there. So
yeah, it's a good point.
I think it's going to be a revolving door.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then you add on, privately ran prison facilities that are in it for the dollar. They're not being ran by the state. They're being ran by other entities that are like basically for-profit prisons, which drives me nuts. And
well, that's a big problem we have going on right now, is that the privately run prisons are we're realizing that the privately run prisons are extremely dangerous places. There's extremely high murder rates in the facilities. There's extremely high rates of the people who are working there committing violent acts against the inmates. The conditions are extremely unsafe. It's very bad, and unfortunately, like anything else in our society, the lobbyists are extremely powerful in our state legislatures, and what the people who are behind these private prison systems have tremendous resources. They lobby, to create these private prison systems, and they get created. And the average person who's just living their regular life is just thinking in the back of their mind, you know what? Crime is bad. Criminals are bad. This is something I don't want to deal with. I don't want to see it. I don't want criminals around me. I want to be protected, and I just want these people locked up. They don't care what happens to them. But the problem with the average citizen, they don't believe or even think for a minute that the next week it could be them or their loved one who's actually the next person who's accused of committing some crime they didn't do. Then how are they going to think about the private prison system if they're accused of some crime? That the policeman is saying, hey, you committed this crime. You committed domestic violence. There was an argument with your wife, and now you're facing a year in jail. Or you were driving down the street and you had an accident. You think it was just a negligent accident, but they're saying that it was a negligent homicide. You killed somebody, and they want you to do time in jail. And now all of a sudden you got to do time in a private prison. Maybe your attitude is going to change about that private prison now. Now it wasn't a place you were thinking, wow, it's a great place to put prisoners, because now you're going to be the prisoner.
Well, and that's part of the problem. I mean, it's a whole out of sight, out of mind thing. And if you're not, having people that are advocating for change and different things that are audible, what's the term my mom used to use? Only the squeaky wheel gets oiled. If we had more squeaky wheels out there and people that were, bringing this information to light, so that way you couldn't run away from it, you couldn't hide from it, you couldn't have that idea of out of sight, out of mind. Then maybe we could start to have some real change. But as long as people can put that stuff in the back of their mind and say to themselves, oh, you know what, they're in prison, they're in their deal, it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect my day to day, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to move on. We'll never be able to impact change until more people start to recognize the problem and start to come together and bring conversations and solutions to the table for some of those issues. You were mentioning China earlier on in our discussion, and then also saying, hey, these prisons are a deterrent. Well, if China has less people that are in prison, but they're also executing people or they're doing other things, maybe that has some merit. I don't know what the answer is, but if I know that if I commit rape on a 12-year-old girl, I'm not going to go to jail. Someone's going to shoot me in the forehead. Maybe the action for somebody doing what they did, or the consequence for their action, if those were much more harsh, maybe there would be less prison sentences.
You know what? I can't really think about that. For me, the big problem I see as being a criminal defense attorney is every week, just about every week in our society, we see people who were wrongfully accused of crimes being exonerated through DNA evidence and through also innocence projects and prosecutions. A lot of prosecutors in different states, look at old cases for prosecutorial and police misconduct. And every day, if you follow the news, every day there's somebody who's being released that's served, 30 years or 20 years, and they found DNA evidence that this person possibly could not have been the person who committed the crime, and they let them go. And they say, hey, we're sorry you just wasted the last 30 years of your life in jail. You know what? And a lot of these convictions come about because of police misconduct. The police, unfortunately, we have an adversarial system in our jurisprudence in the United States where, we have a prosecutor and we have a defense lawyer, and the police are their true role is to really be an investigator of the truth, to try to find out what really happened, right? But the reality is, when they're investigating a crime, very often they make a conclusion in their mind as to who they think the suspect is, and then they feel they're going to prove the case, that this is the person who committed the crime, and they stop having an open mind as an investigator of the truth, and they act as an agent to frame or pin, a case on this particular person they've decided is the suspect, is the guy, is their guy. A lot of times they'll use coercive interrogation tactics to get someone to confess to a crime they didn't even do. There's hundreds of examples of that. One of the things that really shocks me every day is this fact: is the policeman can lie to you. They can get you locked up in a police station, get you to trickily get you to waive your rights. You have your Miranda rights. They'll say, hey, you know what, we'll go easy on you if you talk to us. And if you're in handcuffs, you're in a police station, you might say, hey, that's a good idea. I'll waive my right to a lawyer. I'll waive my right to remain silent. I'll talk to you because, hey, I would like you to go easy on me. And then the policeman will come in and tell you, hey, you know what, your friends have already basically implicated you in this crime. We have all the evidence we need. You might as well start talking, because otherwise you're going to be doing a lot of time in jail. It may be all lies the policeman's telling you, and that's a legitimate, legally authorized method of interrogation the police are allowed to use. Meanwhile, if you lie to the police officer, you can be charged with making a false statement to police or interfering with police and charged with a crime.
Yeah.
It's really not a level playing field.
No, not at all. We got to stop for just a second and talk about an awesome product. And when I say awesome product, I mean awesome because I just used it. I used it yesterday. I use it every other day. I'm bald, and I know having a good set of razor blades is amazing. And now is not the time to overpay for razors at the drugstore. Harry knows sometimes it's better to stay inside. That's why they ship directly to you so you can experience the quality of a Harry shave in just a few days from the convenience of your own home. What I really love about it are their shave gels, the low prices. It's just amazing. Join the 10 million people who have tried Harry's and claim your special trial offer by going to harrys.com/frequency. That's harrys.com/frequency. And why Harry's, you ask? Because it's awesome. I'm a bald guy, like I said before, and I know razors. And I know this product, it's fantastic. Harry's is a return to the essential. Quality, durable blades at a fair price, just $2 a blade. That's right, $2. They've cut out middlemen. They have a great German blade factory that's been honing precision blades for a century. That means you get a high quality blade at factory direct prices. You can feel good about your purchase, 100% quality guarantee. If you don't love your shave, let them know. They'll give you a refund. And 1% of the proceeds are set aside for nonprofit organizations devoted to helping provide access to better health care for men and veterans. You guys know Finding Your Frequency. We love to support the veterans. Exclusive offer for listeners of Finding Your Frequency. Listeners of this show can redeem their Harry's trial set at harrys.com/frequency. You'll get a weighted ergonomic handle for a firm grip, 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and a trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel with aloe to help keep your skin hydrated, and a travel blade cover to keep your razors dry and easy to grab on the go when it's time to do it. Go to harrys.com/frequency and start shaving better today. You know, it's funny. I follow these lawyers that are in California, and they come out with these funny videos that they come out on Friday, and they basically call it "Shut the F Up Friday."
I've seen those guys too.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a whole lot of truth in what they say. You know, you get arrested, and someone says that you did something wrong. You know, I think those guys are they do the same thing that you do for people who are charged for like medical marijuana and marijuana charges. And so, but I mean, it goes for just about any scenario that if you're going to get charged with a crime and the police are able to lie to you blatantly to try to get you to talk, your best defense is to just not say anything until you have your lawyer.
Absolutely, 100%. Any of your listeners out there right now, the Constitution gave us, you know, the founding fathers realized what a police state really is and how terrifying it is, and that's why they gave us, you know, the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable search and seizures. You know, back in England or wherever they came from, you know, the government had the right to just invade your house and search for whatever they want. You know, over here we have these rights, but unfortunately, you know, all too often, people just don't know what their rights are. The policeman will come to their house, you know, or you know, to say, hey, you know what, do you mind if we search your house? And the person says, okay, you know, come on in and search my house. And they find, you know, drugs or whatever evidence they're looking for. You know, why would you let them come into your house? But unfortunately, people just don't know their rights. And, you know, it's an interesting thing. I do a lot of DUI cases, so many of them, hundreds of them. And every single time these cops, right, they say when they come up to the car, every single one of them, they say the strong odor of alcohol when they come up to the window when they're talking to somebody. They never say, you know what, I detected an odor of alcohol, or I detected some odor of alcohol, or I detected a slight odor of alcohol, or I detected a moderate odor of alcohol. Every single police report I've ever read on a DUI investigation says, I detected a strong odor of alcohol. And then the next question they ask you is, they say to the person is, have you been drinking? And every single person thinks, you know what, I'm going to tell them, yeah, I was drinking, but I only had like 2 beers or whatever. Bingo, you just gave an element of the crime because you just admitted that, yes, you've been drinking. Better to say, you know what, I'm not answering any of your questions. Or alternatively, if you want to be super polite, say, you know what, I would love to answer your questions, but I just prefer to have a lawyer present. So if you don't mind giving me the opportunity to call some lawyers to come down here or get a lawyer for me, you know, you don't have a right to have a lawyer present for roadside questioning, but you don't have to answer any questions. So just don't answer it. So many people in my career, the policeman had no case against them, never would have been able to prove anything. And the only way the police can make a case is by getting the person to talk. And one of the classic ways the police do that is they'll call you up on the phone and they'll say, listen, we're calling you up about this, this, or this, and we would just like to get your side of the story. We'd just like to hear your side of the story. And everyone is like, well, hey, I want to go out and give my side of the story and explain to them I'm not guilty. Meanwhile, the police probably don't have enough elements of the crime. They don't have enough proof. And by going down there and giving your side of the story, you're just checking off the boxes of the elements of the crime, and it makes me sad that more people don't know their rights. But as much as I can I have a small YouTube channel. I don't have a YouTube channel like the guys you referenced. I love their YouTube channel. It's fantastic. I have a small one, but everywhere I go, every time I speak to anybody, I always put out the message, know your constitutional rights and use them.
Yeah, well, that's like all these videos, and I am all for our ability to freely move about the state, the country, the whatever, and I live in Arizona, right? And so what drives me absolutely nuts is that you'll have Border Patrol agents set up 50 miles away from the border doing Border Patrol checkpoints for no reason in the middle of a highway, right? For people that are driving laterally through the state and they hadn't even, the highway doesn't even go to the border. Right. It goes, east, west, not north, south. So, and then randomly pulling people over at these checkpoints, asking them if they're United States citizens and why are they driving this road. And, I feel the same way too about the, DUI checkpoints where they're basically just, trying to fabricate anything and everything they can to, get people's money. It just drives me nuts. And so many times I just love the videos when people get pulled over in the DUI checkpoints and they have their ID and their driver's license in a bag and they crack the window about 1 inch and hang the bag out the window and then roll the window up and they don't say a word. I love it.
Well, I you know what, I have to tell you that I've watched the so-called sovereign citizen or AKA traveler videos, that whole concept. Mm-hmm. I will say that unfortunately the vast majority of those individuals, they're, although, the guys who do those videos, it's a very entertaining concept and they're going to get their videos monetized, and some of them, they do it as a hobby. And, it's actually a stream of revenue for them. Okay. So they go out, they go into, the guys who are smart about it, what they'll do is they won't be doing anything illegal or possibly illegal, like driving under the influence, right? And they'll go into a public area, like a town hall or into a police station or a school or wherever they feel like they have a right to be, and in a
start
public
filming.
area, and they'll be recording, and they'll get the policeman to respond, right? And then when the policeman responds, they'll start talking trash to the policeman. And then the policeman, there's really nothing they can do because they're authorized to film in public. They can do whatever they want. And it makes for an entertaining video with the showdown with the policeman. And the policeman's like, well, who are you? Will you identify yourself? But these guys who drive, okay, let me just say this. I don't condone driving under the influence whatsoever. It's very dangerous. I just had a client of mine, who was tragically involved in an accident while driving the influence, and somebody was injured. It's really bad, and nobody wants to have their loved ones injured. What I'm talking about is keeping the playing field level so that our constitutional rights are protected, and that the policemen are respecting your constitutional rights. And I believe that if the constitutional rights are respected, everyone's going to get a fair shake in the justice system. But
yeah.
What you're talking about is the sovereign citizen, okay, who is let's say, has no driver's license or has their driver's license suspended or is drunk driving, and then refusing to answer the policeman's questions when they're operating a motor vehicle, and just passing a piece of paper that says, "Listen, I'm not driving a motor vehicle. I'm traveling. I'm not actually driving. You don't have the right to have my driver's license because I'm traveling." I can't speak for every state because I'm licensed in Connecticut and New York, but I can just tell you that in Connecticut, that approach is going to be met very poorly in Connecticut. you're going to wind up being charged with the crime of interfering with police.
Right.
And if you don't come out of the vehicle, they're going to break your window, like I've seen in some of those videos. I saw one, which I don't know if did you see this one particular video?
Yeah, and real quick, Allan, my point on this wasn't necessarily the whole traveler videos, but more, in the state that I live in. I live in a border state, and these guys set up border patrol checkpoints 50 miles away from the border and make you stop in the middle of the highway to prove that you're a United States citizen.
Well, I'm going to say this. Unfortunately, the enforcement of protecting, our national boundaries, right, is conflicting with our liberties for existing in our society.
That's a good point.
So there has to be some. Thomas Hobbes said, "Life in the state of nature is nasty, brutish, and short." So he concluded that we enter into political society, some form of government where we agree to live under the laws so that we have protection against others. I see your point. I agree wholeheartedly. It's an intrusion upon our liberty when we have to identify ourselves, so we have to be detained or stopped. But I'll point out, I've traveled extensively in other nations in Central America, Mexico, South America, extensively driven cars and traveled. Every one of those nations, if you don't have your passport and your visa, within a day, you will come across what they call a control with a cone in the middle of the road, every single person. And you know why they have those controls? They have those controls because they don't pay their police officers enough, and those controls are a money-making operation for the police officer. They stop every car, and they make sure everyone has all their paperwork in order. Not only their immigration documents, but their registration, their driver's license, and everything else. So in our society, the policeman needs to have some probable cause to pull you over ordinarily, right? So in those countries, they don't because they're corrupt. So they just pull over everybody that comes down the road, and they check your documents.
Well, and that's what they do and that's what they do at these border checkpoints in Arizona. They literally make every single car stop, right? Whether you're doing anything wrong, right, indifferent, whatever. It's like, hey, we're stopping every car and we're checking to make sure that you're supposed to be here. And it's like, why are you even pulling me over? What did I do wrong? Not to mention I'm 50 miles away from the border.
Yeah, but the thing is in that situation. Is we have to ask ourselves, and the question is a balancing question, right? That's why I was talking about Thomas Hobbes. Is this kind of a balancing question? Is if you're a citizen, right? What are you willing to give up your liberty to not be stopped and detained anywhere, even for a minute, to be totally free to go wherever you want, but at the same time, the people who are protecting our borders are very restricted and limited in the ability to apprehend people who are coming across our border. So that's kind of like I don't really take a position either way on either point.
Yeah, no, and I don't necessarily take one either.
It's a competing value. See, so
yeah.
Basically they're setting up their checkpoint probably a little too far. When you go into Mexico, they have their checkpoint set about 12 miles from the border. If you want to go into the interior of Mexico, so when you're driving into Mexico, you drive, and then 12 miles later, they have a more intensive checkpoint where they check you out more thoroughly if you want to go beyond the border region, right?
Yep.
It's 12 miles. 50 miles from the border is a little far into the country, I'd say. I mean, I kind of think it's invading a little bit, and it also, depending upon which road you're on, right? If you're going on a road that's going east-west, maybe that's not really your most heavily trafficked migrant route. You expect to go on a north-south route,
right?
But at the end of the day, it's like this. Think about this other thing too. This whole stop and frisk thing. It's very controversial, right? They did that in New York City. Bloomberg. That's probably one of the reasons why he's not going to be president.
He dropped out today.
People are outraged about that.
He dropped out today.
Yeah. So that was probably the number one reason, because people in the minority community were so outraged with stop and frisk because they were so annoyed that they'd be walking down the street, and just because they're black and they're living in the ghetto, they're going to be stopped and frisked, right? Meanwhile, if you're some white guy in Wall Street, you're not going to get stop and frisked, right? So, but the problem was at the time that he implemented stop and frisk, if you were living in the impoverished area of New York City, like in the South Bronx, the death rate was like ridiculous. It was off the chart. It was people were killing each other right and left. It was like, I think it was like 600 homicides a year. So when they started to stop and frisk, the homicide rate went down dramatically. So, you have to really, I don't really make a judgment call on it one way or the other, but at the same time, you really have to ask yourself, the question is do you want the liberty of being able to walk down the street without a policeman coming up and stopping and frisking you for a weapon? Or do you want to have the problem of people walking around the street with guns? Because when they started doing the stop and frisk, then the people who had guns didn't carry them around with them anymore because they didn't want to get caught with a gun. So they left the gun at home. So the homicide rate went down. So it's a problem, right? Yeah. Guns, and by the way,
like you say, it's a balancing act.
It sure is, and guns and gun violence is another huge problem in our society. And let's face the reality. Listen, I don't like to get too political, but the reality is the gun violence that's occurring in our society is not the law-abiding gun owner, who has a pistol permit or lawfully owns a sporting arm. Those are not the people who are committing the gun violence or most of the gun problem in our society, right? The people who are committing the gun violence are people who are criminals who are coming into possession of guns. So, how do we counteract the huge problem of gun violence, right, in cities like Detroit and other inner city areas, Chicago, right, where we have basically like a war going on every day with casualties, with deaths. Yeah. People who are looing their loved ones, right? Who are completely innocent. You make
a good point. There's definitely something that needs to be done in that space. And looking at the time here, I think maybe we'll have to have a follow-up interview with you on so we can talk a little bit more about some of these, issues that are plaguing us as Americans and how we can, come together and have some common ground and try to come up with some policies that are working for everybody, because the Beto O'Rourke way of saying I'm just going to take everybody's guns probably isn't the best way, and we can talk more about that when we have you back. Thank you for being on. Allan Friedman, attorney at law. Check out his website, allanffriedmanlaw.com, and of course you can always shoot him an email from his website and go check out what they do. Allan, thank you for joining us today.
It was a great pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, very much so. I appreciate it very much. You guys are tuned in to Finding Your Frequency right here on Voice America Talk Radio. Please make sure you come back every week, check out our episodes, and we'll talk to you guys next time right here on Finding Your Frequency.